What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jack Ramsays. Danny Marang here. It is now, what time? 6:12? 6:12 on a Wednesday, right? God, I get off the radio and I forget what days. To be fair, I get on the radio and I forget what day that is. It's been 3 Blazers games in 4 days. Finally an off night. Heading into the NBA trade deadline. We are now, 18 hours? 17 hours and 48 minutes away from the NBA trade deadline at noon tomorrow. I've got a bunch of your questions here that we'll dive into. Reminder, like, rate, review, subscribe, do all of the things. Help us grow. Help us, to me now. What are we talking about? Help me get back to doing more podcasts. That's where we're at this point. I said I was going to do more. I'm going to do more. It's been very difficult with the fast and furious nature of the post-game show. And how that getting home at 12:30 at night makes this very difficult to do. So I'm trying to squeeze them in when we have off days and dive into it. I'm gonna, because of the short nature between now and the deadline, I'm gonna get to as many questions of the trade deadline stuff as I can here. Post trade deadline after the game tomorrow, we'll talk about a little bit on the post game show, but. Probably Friday, I'm hoping I can bring in a guest and we can talk about kind of what happened on the deadline. We'll do like a bigger thing. The Blazers, I believe, are planning to have media availability before the game tomorrow because the trade deadline will have officially passed. And we can ask about whatever moves they make or don't make. But let's kind of dive right into your questions right out of the gate. My guy Shiloh. Blazers have been on a great run pre-trade deadline. I'm sure they aren't showcasing for other teams, but I'm wondering if guys like Ayton, who don't want to be traded, show out with huge effort, and we'll start to see some letting off the gas once the deadline passes. So I think for the most part, a lot of people think that anytime a player, and this child isn't a shot at you, I think this is like a general fan thing. I mean, hell, I thought this when I was younger. Think there's a lot more showcasing that goes on than I think there really does. Now, I think most people in the league generally believe that you are who you are. You're not really fooling anybody with a hot run, or you're not really, killing anybody with a cold run. It helps to be front of mind in that stuff. But I think for the most part, you are who you are, unless you're kind of an unknown commodity that's kind of taken off or something like that. But when you're talking about the Blazers vets, everybody knows what the Blazers vets are. Anthony Simons is a scorer. Rob Williams is just a monster defender rim roller, right? DA is an offensive minded center who is showing some defensive versatility, and Jerami is a big forward who is a 3-and-D guy who's got some of his own self creation. And they've got enough tape and enough on them that I don't think it's anything that has to do with big effort about staying or going. I genuinely believe this, that these guys are bought in right now, particularly DA, because you highlighted him here. One of the things I think that the Blazers and Ayton had to work on coming out of that transaction that brought him from the Dame trade from Phoenix to Portland, I think there was a lot of damaged trust with DeAndre Ayton and just organizations in general. And I think that the Blazers had to build that up over time. And I think that it took a long time. And this is the thing that I've the drum that I have beat for Chauncey Billups is not that he's the best coach on the face of the planet. Not that, he's, on his way to the Hall of Fame, but he has been, and he has mentioned this publicly, and I do believe it to be very true. Chauncey has been everywhere at some point in his career. He was a number 3 overall pick. He was a guy that was traded surprisingly. He was a guy I think was, cast out in a sense. He's been the leader of a finals MVP and a champion. Like, he's been all the different places that guys could be. The only thing that I think Chauncey's never really gone through is like a devastating injury, which, but he can just relate to guys. And I think he and the staff and the organization have gotten a good rapport and a good trust going with DA. And I think DA's just hooping right now. because it's never been about talent with DA. Never, ever, 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 ever been about talent. 7 foot tall, 270 pounds, runs like a deer, incredible touch around the rim and as a mid-range shooter. As a play finisher, he's very good. Like you can say effort and mentality and all those kind of things. He's also the same guy that anchored a Suns team defensively all the way to the NBA Finals. It's one of those things where I think it's just kind of coming together. And I think DA's had not a realization, but like just an understanding. Because the guys in the locker room like him. The guys around his team, they like him. DA's a really fun, good dude. I think he's miscast as I don't even know the right word for it. But when you're around him, DA's a generally a good dude. And I think just getting him on a level and understanding and making him a part of things has been a huge thing for him. And I've said this in the postgame show over the last probably week. I think his buy-in, his effort, the stuff that he's done has been one of the biggest things about this run. He's their leading scorer. He missed 3 games out of the last 10, but in all 7 of the games he's played in, they've won. He's averaging 21 and 12, if I remember right. I was looking at this earlier during the radio show. In that period, he's averaging 21 and 12, shooting 60% from the floor. But you're also seeing stuff like you saw last night where he's darting into a passing lane, getting a deflection, going coast to coast and dunking. Like he has taken the ball coast to coast, I think 3 times in the past week, and I haven't seen him do it once outside of that. Like he's juiced. And talking to folks around the league, I don't think folks are calling on DeAndre, and I don't think the Blazers are taking calls on DeAndre. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I just think you look at where DeAndre is right now. Number one, the Blazers are happy with him. Number two, he's a $35 million center. And in this economy, as it were, in the NBA, I think that's probably too pricey for a center, not like one of the top 2 guys that you run your offense through. So I don't think the Blazers are looking at anything there. I don't think DA's trying to juice anything up. A guy like Jerami maybe is a reminder that he's that good defensively, because he's been, since he's come back this from getting his bell rung, getting his jaw knocked. It was, I think, the case of like a whiplash, I guess. He has been an absolute demon defensively, and I don't think that's so much of a showcase as much as a reminder of like, no, I am that guy. Like, don't get it twisted. I can still be that guy. Because, I mean, we can be honest. He's been shut down the last couple of years. And I think people just kind of parked him because Portland's been a team that has steered into the skid, so to speak, and it just hasn't worked out for him. But I don't think you're going to see those guys necessarily let off the gas as much as if the Blazers decide to go a different path and prioritize the young guys down the stretch. It won't be about them not giving effort. I just don't think they'll play as much. And that's, I think there is a real difference between those two. Jared Cowley, what's your impression now of the desire of Simons and Grant to be here? I know they haven't asked for a trade, but will either of them prefer one? I don't want to speak for those guys, but I think that they would be open to it. I think they would be open to that deal. But neither of those guys have like gone out and said, get me out of here now. I think if the right opportunity came along, I think they'd both welcome it to go play for a competitive team. But right now they're playing good competitive basketball. And I think that anytime you're winning and playing well, which both those guys have been, I think that definitely lessens the blow for sure. But I don't think that either of them are like, I'm not leaving Portland ever. This is my home, my forever home. I think, again, that they would be open to a move, but I think they'd be open to a move that got them to a competitor. Like that's, I think, especially for those guys at where they are in their career. I mean, Ant's a guy who's looking for another contract, so he probably wants to showcase that. And that anytime you're doing it on a winner, it's easier to do that. And Jeremy's 30 years old, so yeah, I would imagine he's probably in that same boat. But Merseyside Blue, GDs. How good is it to be a Blazer Everton fan right now? Hey, look, it's a very niche community, but they're both doing well right now. It's fun to flip on a Premier League match and not be in tears. It was when the relegation stuff was happening. Jeffrey Jensen, given the current market, why do people still want to trade? What could we get for our B or C level players? A 1 pound slab of bacon, a 3rd round draft pick. Could we even move laterally? Could we trade for maybe a Wi-Fi router and an annual Oregon Live subscription? I think that your general question about the current market is a really good question. One of the things that I put out there after the Luka trade was, and this isn't to cast Anthony Davis as nothing, but I don't know anybody in the NBA who thinks that the Mavericks shouldn't have gotten significantly more value on Luka Doncic. Like that, God, I guess we haven't talked about it on the podcast. This better work out for Nico Harrison. It better work out, man, because you gave away maybe the most successful individual accolade 25-year-old in the history of basketball. Somebody had the stat the other day, like the only 2 players out there to average, their career averages are 25, 7, and 7, are LeBron and Luka. It's like, yikes. So, but kind of going back a couple of years, you go to the Rudy Gobert trade, where after Gobert, like a lot of front offices were like, well, if he's worth 5 first round picks, then Giannis is worth 9. Like there was that kind of shifting of the market, whereas this is such the Luka trade was so off axis, so out of bounds that I don't think it reset the market, so to speak, or changed the market as much as it changed like the paradigm of who and what is available. So I've talked to half dozen or so high-level front office folks over the last couple of days, and I asked them some version of the same question. And the question was, did the Luka trade make you change like the pressure or the thought process of the check-in phone calls? So for those that don't know, the check-ins happen all the time. Like, hey, where are you at with Giannis? Where are you at with SGA? Where are you at with Luka? Where are you at with Jokic? Like, hey, if would you consider X, Y, and Z for A? Like, it's just like, hey, you're doing due diligence, and every one of them responded with, oh God, yeah, everyone's calling on everyone. Like, because after that, you're going, if he's available, like you've heard players like following that game, the Suns and Blazers, and after the Luka trade, like I reached out to a handful of players. Every single one of them said the exact same thing. If he can be traded, anyone's fair game. Like it was like, and it wasn't a joke. Like every player I talked to was like floored, shocked, stunned, whatever you want to use to substitute in there for surprised. It was definitely there. I think the other side of this, and I think somebody else asked about it, is like kind of the idea of why anybody would want to make trades right now with the way the team is playing. I think you can separate those two things. I've been adamant over the last, 9 games now, that enjoy this. It's fun. I don't think it's going to last that long. I do believe that there's real growth. Scoot, 2, Denny, DeAndre, Shaden, like, hell, and Jerami, like, I believe basically the entire team has shown real growth, and those dividends were being paid off. I've mentioned before I was doing a long write-up on Scoot. It's still coming, but one of the things that I was going to have in there was in Jason Quick's article today, and the meetings that were coming up 6 weeks, 2 months ago, and kind of like where this stuff was and what happened and what they laid down. And I think you can have all of that stuff and still, if the right trade comes your way, you make the trade, right? Like that's where I'm at with that, as far as like, even if the team's doing well, you're not in a position right now where like you're going for a title. You don't want to disrupt this. You know what I mean? If the right trade came up for anyone on the roster, like I think that's one of those situations where you definitely go down that path. But I don't think it's necessarily what you're asking, but it kind of ties in with another question in here. Zach Townsend, if we're inching away from being a team with good lottery odds, why not try to upgrade the roster at the deadline instead of trying to sell? Looking to New Orleans for like a BI or Zion to potentially buy low. Not exact targets, but what if we upgraded from JG as opposed to selling for picks? So this is actually super interesting in the sense of I don't necessarily believe the Blazers are going to do that at this deadline, like at all. It would surprise me. But if you recall, I mentioned after the Danny Avdia trade last year at the draft that the Blazers did check in on Danny Avdia at the deadline last year. And they just couldn't come to an agreement with Wizards with where draft capital was and kind of how things were laying out. And fast forward, once they have the lottery and they know where things are at and they kind of see the landscape and they have a better understanding, they have a little more runway, and both the Wizards and the Blazers are meeting the goals that they want to meet. The Blazers were willing to give up assets to go get Danny Avdia. And I think if that's the kind of situation that you're looking for, that's where I would say not necessarily buying low, but what the Blazers have forecasted as a front office is that if there's somebody that they like that meets the criteria of the type of player that they're going after, which look at the players that they've gone after recently, right? Whether it's two in that trade, getting DA, and for everybody who kind of, pushes DA aside, the idea of DeAndre Ayton is kind of what they want to an extent, right? They wanted, number one, they wanted to, I don't want to say get off Nurk, but obviously they made the right decision in getting off Nurk with where he's at physically right now. And I love the guy. I wish him nothing but well. It's a major bummer what he's having to go through. But in the basketball sense, you were crazy if you don't think that the Blazers have come out smelling like roses on the backside of that, even with DeAndre's contract and what that kind of stuff means, because they have a functional, good, hell, you could say very good center when DA's playing like this, and Toumani Camara. Toumani Camara has become the heart and soul of this franchise. Him, Toumani, Denny, drafting Scoot, drafting Shaden, drafting Chris Murray, drafting Ryan Rupert. Like, look at the guys that they've prioritized. And you could see it on display against the Indiana Pacers the other night. That Trailblazers team with Damian Lillard after the 2015 season, so from 2016 through 2020, was the least athletic team in the NBA. Really good team. Least athletic team in the league. This franchise right now, this front office right now, is prioritizing bigger, longer, stronger, more physical, more athletic, more aggressive. And if you're looking at that, I don't think BI is the kind of guy that really projects that way. He's long, don't get me wrong. But do you want to be the team that pays Brandon Ingram $35 million? $40 million? Do you want to be the one to take on Zion and that? Like, it's one thing to take on Luka and his ticking time bomb of an Achilles or some of his off-court questions, off-court habits, as it were, and his weight management stuff. Because the thing about Luka, 35, 10, and 10. That's what that dude was last year, taking that team to the NBA Finals. That isn't Zion. And I don't think that's ever going to be Zion. And I don't think that's a risk worth taking. But if you're talking about the Blazers potentially going after a guy that makes sense for them, yes, I do believe that they would do that, but I don't think that is a deadline deal. I think that's a summer deal. That's the way I think that they would look to do something. But I don't think that they're looking to upgrade the roster as far as impacting this season. Now, if a trade came available right now that made them like noticeably better today, and it made sense to do today, would they do it? Yeah, I think they would. I don't think that deal's on the table. I haven't heard anything remotely about something like that. But you get to this summer, and Lord knows, you see the NBA landscape right now. Everything's out there. Everything's available. Everything's this, that, or the other. it's interesting. Ben Miller, if Phoenix makes Booker available, do you think Portland would and or should make a big offer for him? No, I don't, because I think there's other, like Houston probably has more to offer, and they are a team that has specifically mentioned Devin Booker. Like there's for, around the league that you hear these whispers and these discussions and these rumors and these thoughts that are shared between scouts and front offices and media, and we all talk, and Houston is very much a team that has been linked with the eyeing Devin Booker. OKC is the team often talked about if Giannis becomes available, they go get Giannis. If a couple years ago, it was when Donovan Mitchell got traded to Cleveland, he was trying to get his way to New York. Like as you're seeing right now, like Jimmy Butler was trying to get to Phoenix. He ended up going to the Bay because the Bay took the chance and they ended up paying him. But there are players that are always angling to try to get somewhere. De'Aaron Fox, he was like, I'm going to hitch my wagon to San Antonio. And he's not the only player. There are a dozen players in the league that were trying somehow, some way to finagle their way to be the one to tie themselves to Victor Wembanyama. It is a very, 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 very good business decision and career decision, because I know I'm not in the minority of this, but I think Wemby has the chance to quite literally be the best player the game has ever seen. And if you're a guy who's pretty damn good, tying yourself to that, that's how you get in, the finals. That's how you get multiple All-Stars, because you're his running mate. That's how you make a career. That's how you get additional endorsements, because you're on national TV 50 times a season. That's how you get in the Hall of Fame. Like, seriously. Like De'Aaron Fox, like making that move, love it for him. But as far as like Booker goes, I don't think that necessarily makes sense right now. It would be interesting. Like, he's the kind of talent I think certainly you would have to at least check on, if that makes sense. But I think you want to go for somebody just a little bit younger. Like, not the same level, but if Orlando decided to make a move with like Franz or Paolo or something like that, I think you want to go that next generation of players. It wouldn't happen, but like Evan Mobley, I think you guys are understanding what I was saying. Like, I think you're aiming at guys that are not on their crazy contracts yet, the crazy supermaxes, the guys that are on the fun maxes. I think those are the kind of players that if you were going to like cash in every chip that you had for a guy, that's what they would do. But I think they're still a step away from doing that. I think they need to get one more asset kind of trade. Jonathan Sass, so many, so many questions. First, if the Blazers make no substantive changes, do they just go for it and see what happens? Or shut it down after the break, knowing what the potential looks like now? Second, do you trade for win now soon players or more future assets if you do something? First of all, I don't think they're going to meddle with what they have right now until they get to the All-Star break, and then they sit down and they assess where are we at in the standings. I guess you say you probably do it after tomorrow to an extent, and then All-Star break when you have a little bit more understanding of where things are at, how you look at doing these things, right? I have been a firm believer that not only that they should shut guys down and like even after seeing this run from these guys, you're seeing some potential for sure. I don't think it does them any favors to win additional games basically February and March to push to the 13th seed and just push yourself higher up in the lottery standings, and higher being worse, lower being better, right? I would shut some guys down for sure. For sure. I've had some people like, well, if they shut the vets down, the young guys will still win. No, they won't. If you take basically 50 points a night, 45 points a night between Ant and DA off the floor alone, let alone the shot creation, the rebounding, the consistency that you can get from those guys, and you're playing Donovan, Rob, Jabari, and even Rob to an extent, like he gets pushed to the side. If it's Donovan, Jabari, Wap, I love those guys, but they're not giving the same level of production or consistency, size, athleticism, all those things. And as good as Scoot has shot and as good as he has been over the last couple weeks, last 6 weeks, teams are still not going to treat him like the way that teams treat Anthony Simons. And I know anytime I say anything positive about Ant, how it's taken. Look, coaches treat Anthony Simons vastly different than opponent coaches treat Scoot Henderson. Like, as good as Scoot is shooting, I don't think you're going to see the league really change how they treat him until he finishes the season shooting well. Then the scouting report that comes out next year, it's, hey, look, you got to fight over screens. You can't under him every single time. So that kind of stuff, I think, would push them down in the standings naturally, while allowing those guys to play the minutes that everybody's screaming about them to play 5 more minutes a night. So, as far as the trade for the win now, soon players or future assets, I think the Blazers, I think, are open to both, as I understand it. Is that, they did expend some draft capital getting Denny, and if they were going to make a move, whether now or in the summer, that in the past, I think that would very much have prioritized contracts and players. They would like to kind of restock their war chest in a sense. Like, they would be open to a picks package, I think. More in the past, I think they probably would have preferred players. I think it's a little bit of both, because in order to go get whatever player shakes free, you need to have a mixture of both. You need to have some contracts, you need to have some players, you need to have some picks, right? Now, it's a sliding scale depending on what you're going after, who you're going after, when you're going after them. But that's kind of where things are. April Fool's B-Day. Oof, that's tough. Based on any and all information you know and can share, how many Blazers Wolves trades do you expect to occur before the deadline? And do you expect at least one Blazer trade to occur before the deadline? I don't. I've been saying this for probably 5 or 6 weeks now. I don't see the Blazers making any moves right now. Like, I'd be very surprised if they did. You've seen reporting out there that I can back up, in the sense of the Blazers are not going to give Rob Williams away for second-round picks. It's just not something that they have flagged they are willing to do. I think they value him more than that, and they won't just give him up just to move him. That has not been something that I have heard from anyone in the NBA world. In fact, everybody I've basically heard from is that they are maintaining a high price on Robert Williams. I haven't heard a lot of traction around any Anthony Simons stuff. I don't think the Blazers are actively looking to move him, to be honest. It's one of those things where you look around the league and there's only so many landing spots for him. And I think the Blazers are still kind of waiting to see what they have in young guys before they make that decision. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it. I think that's the world where I think they're at. But if you're telling me the line for Blazers trades is 1.5, hell, even 1.5, I'd probably take the under right now. Now, again, we've got 17 hours. Anything can change. A team could, if the Lakers put a 2031 first on the table for Rob Williams, do I think they'd probably entertain that? Yeah, I do. At least I think they should, for sure. But I don't think they're in any kind of hurry to move those guys. I see a bunch of people in the chat asking about Matisse Thybulle. I talked to Matisse beginning of the homestand, and unfortunately his ankle's just jacked. Like, I don't think he's gonna. Obviously he can't now. He's not going to get on the floor before the trade deadline, and without playing this year, I don't think teams are even going to call on Tease right now, just because he hasn't played this season. He was, I want to say he was a day away. I think he was going to play the next game. When in practice he rolled the living bejesus out of his ankle, and he basically said, I couldn't have rolled it basically any worse than I did. And look, there's been some bad ankle injuries, and I want to say that was first week of December, December 10th, 12th, something like that. First week, second week, somewhere right around there. And I've heard of grade 2 ankle sprains that take 8 to 12 weeks to heal. This isn't something the Blazers are just sitting him down for. Like, he rolled the living crap out of his ankle. It happens. I think we're probably due for an update from the team any day now. In fact, with there being press availability tomorrow, it's probably a good chance that we get some update on him. Maybe I'm spitballing right now. That's not sourced on anything. I've just imagined with everybody in the room that we probably get something. From Brandon, since we're likely not to trade anyone, was there something out there that would have helped the flexibility of the team financially that Joe didn't want to pull the trigger on? Okay. On this, and for all of the people out there who, you carry the water for the Blazers, blah, 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 blah. Look, this is my stance that I've held pretty tightly to. If the Blazers had a trade that I heard about that they didn't do, that didn't make sense or didn't help the flexibility or didn't put them in better position, not only in the immediacy but going forward, I would come forward with that and beat them over the head with it. The same way that I did with Neil Olshey and his failings as it pertained to getting a legitimate running mate for Damian Lillard. Like I know about transactions and discussions that have happened over the last 2 years and what some things the Blazers pursued and what, the other teams wanted in return. And in those instances, there hasn't been one where I was like, they screwed that up. Like what are they doing? Why did they not take that? There's been justifications for basically everything that I've heard of like, no, I wouldn't do that either. It's not something that's happened to my knowledge. Now, I don't know about every single discussion, only they do. But when something is out there that has real juice to it, even as tight-lipped as this front office is with their transaction discussions, I get it. Probably a fair amount of stuff that comes through that I hear about either right afterwards or immediately following it. That X, Y, and Z. Not everything, but I like I said, I get a decent amount of it. So I haven't, to my knowledge, I haven't heard of that thing. So take that for what it's worth. I know I'm the water carrying guy for the Blazers. Whatever. From Josh, if they don't make a trade tomorrow, what's the plan for next season? Run it back or still try to trade the vets during the offseason? I mean, for the most part, the Blazers have conducted a lot of their businesses during the offseason. They aren't a big in-season trade guy. Like, it's one of those things where, somewhere Orlando, notorious not in-season trade team. Like, who was I talking about the other day? There's another team. There's another team that doesn't make a ton of in-season trades, and I know I'm totally blanking on it. Either way, there's probably like 5-6 teams around the league that really don't do a ton around the trade deadline. They're very precise about what they do. They probably take longer than most people think. I think people are probably looking at Orlando specifically, like, are they ever going to get somebody who can shoot over there? Like, that's something they should probably prioritize. But, come in the off season, I think that's when you start getting more of the lay of the land. I think a lot of that has to do with how not just front offices, but also ownership works. Some owners are just either hands off and just run it. Some are very hands on and micromanage. Some set their own prices on, hey, I like player X. I'm not going to get rid of, I'm not going to sign off on you trading this player unless you get A, B, and C in return. Like those are the things that even media, a lot of times, we're not privy to. You don't really know where the delineation exists and who's calling what shots and what transactions. Like as the autopsy of the Luka Doncic trade shows, the principal owner of the Dallas Mavericks laughed in Nico Harrison's face when he suggested trading Luka for Anthony Davis. I mean, holy crap. So, that's a long way to say I think this is a team that probably does more in the offseason than they do at the deadline. I do believe that the Blazers, if a deal is there, they should. I think they should. I think they should try to unclutter this to an extent. I do not believe that they should sell off any single player just to sell off players, just to placate, just so Shaedon Sharpe or Scoot Henderson get 4 more minutes a night. I do not believe they should do that in any way, shape, matter, or form. If you think, we'll use Jerami as an example. I'm not saying this, I'm just saying this as an example. If you're saying his value is this low right now and it's not going to get any better, blah, 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 why would you sell him right now? And if your answer is to get more minutes for those guys, there's a very easy way to do that. And we've seen it done over the past 3 years. Okay? Because if his value's bottomed out, what's the harm in waiting till the summer? You know? What if he does recoup some value? Maybe he does, something does open up somewhere and something makes more sense. They're just not in a hurry because they don't have that guy yet. And I think that's ultimately where they are. But as far as like, do I think they're going to try to make some moves in the offseason? Yes. They can't run this back like the general this next season. That's not going to happen. Like that, I would be, not only would I be stunned, I'd be pretty pissed, to be honest. Like I don't think you can do that at all. Sorry, I'm checking my phone because it keeps buzzing. And I want to make sure I didn't miss anything as far as what's out there. So, okay, nothing new. The way the transaction world is right now, my wrist and my phone are going off like crazy. I'm like, all right, maybe doing a show during like this part of the trade deadline isn't the best idea. And this kind of feeds into this. This is from at RipCDDC. What is the reason for keeping Jerami? At this point, in the grand scheme of things, is that addition by subtraction? Clearly doesn't fit the timeline, and even though it's been a nice stretch lately, isn't it time to move on? At least get off some of the money in years. And I ask again, why? If you're somebody who thinks it's an addition by subtraction, and his value is not that high, and he makes $30 million, who are you trading him to just get off of him? Right? If you're just getting off of him, are you taking back bad money? If you're taking back bad money, how many years is that worth? Okay, now let's go a step beyond that. If you're taking back bad money, what if you have to take back 2 or 3 players? Well, now you're in a spot where you have to move additional players that you may not want to move, or you have to waive guys. And it's like, I get where people are coming because they're tired and they want a direction, they want all these things. They don't have a direction until they have the guy. They've got a lot of guys, but not the guy yet. And that's why I'm like, shout out Mike Richmond. Mike and I, we see things pretty similar in a lot of things, but we disagree on this one. And in the speed at which transactions should take place. Because my holistic approach to this is very much, not that it doesn't matter, it's just that the speed at which you do that stuff is significantly slower, in my opinion, when you don't have your North Star, right? Like that's where I see this stuff at. And let's put it this way. Let's say the Blazers finished 7th in the lottery odds. And let's say they end up 2nd. They don't get Cooper, right? They, whether it's Dylan Harper, whether it's Ace Bailey, whatever it is, you have it too. That, you know, we'll dive into the draft stuff. I've got a ton going. As I mentioned before, I'm heading down to Oregon, Rutgers to watch Dylan and Ace. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday down to Oregon. See what they look like up close in person a year after Hoop Summit, basically. But now you go, okay, we're going to take our guy here, but what do we do now? And I think then you have a better understanding of if you land at that spot of what you want to do and where you want to move guys. And I think that part of it is such a open-ended question right now that's probably what precludes any kind of speed or impetus to get that done. So that's where I'm at. Rip City Dad, what's the best trade suggestion you've seen for Portland that you'd like to see happen? I mean, there's a ton of like suggestions, but like where talks have actually took place, not a ton. with so much movement right now, like what I really need to do is I need to go tinker with a trade deadline and see where salaries are at after a lot of these moves, and then kind of come back to it. But there's plenty of teams that are looking for front court help, and I'm not wishing for Rob to go anywhere. But if the Blazers could get an actual first out of him, like a legitimate first, I think that's probably number one on the board. If they could get they could get non-toxic salary and a viable first for Jerami, I think they should pursue that. For Ant, I think that's a different sell, because I think the way organizationally that they view Ant is that Ant is the one guy that they have on their roster whose like role is get buckets. And without him, it does kind of put him in a weird spot on any given night. So I don't know where that spot is, because I think they'd want to get something back that's at least similar in vein, because as good as their defense has been, and it's led to a lot of their offense, going forward, they're still pretty limited in the half court. But without him, again, the caveats of I know how anytime I say anything nice about Anthony, that's taken, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of where it is. Taryn Benedict asked basically what would be the best situation for Ant. I think there's three teams. One of them's a very obvious one in Orlando for not only basketball reasons, but personal reasons. It's like it's Ant's backyard is going to Orlando. Like yeah, duh. It makes basketball sense and like off court sense for him. Like I know Ant would be happy there. Another team I think about is Detroit. I think Detroit would be a really good landing spot for him. I think him and Cade. I know with Jaden Ivey, you don't really know what you have yet because of the leg injury, but I think that's the exact kind of player that would look really good alongside Cade Cunningham. And then San Antonio. I mean, but Ant and 20 other guys in the league would also like to play with Victor Wembanyama, like the stuff that he allows you to do. But those are the three that kind of pop up for me. Ant Smith asks, what are the odds we trade someone with a salary above $5 million a year? Basically, he's talking about the non-Jabari doo-wop. I think they're relatively low. I don't think that those are things that they're looking at right now. Shane Lowell, do you think the recent success could result in the Blazers ultimately retaining Chauncey? This is a really good question. I don't have an answer for that that's really clear, because I know a lot of people around the league are operating that under the auspices of Chauncey Billups being kind of in a lame duck situation. And, Chauncey made no bones about, he didn't sign up to coach a young team last summer. He had a bunch of podcast appearances, and, I get it. He came here to coach Damian Lillard, and Damian Lillard not here anymore, right? Do I know where Chauncey's head is at on that? No, I don't. But I will tell you, his give a damn is there. He has not packed it up and packed it in, as it were. In fact, I think he doubled down on giving a damn by pushing Shaedon Sharpe to the bench. By, again, if you read Jason Quick's article on as far as like what's going to change his turnaround, having some very real, honest, tough conversations with not only Scoot, not only Shaedon, but the veterans too. And this is not me tooting my own horn, but this is like, I'm going to ring the bell of like, this is the reason why when everybody was screaming about Chauncey, I was like, look, I know he's not the best X's and O's coach. I know he's gotten plenty wrong, blah, blah, blah. But the players, they have continued to tell me over and over and over again how much they like the guy, how much respect they have for him, and you see it on the floor. Have they had some really bad blowouts where they let go of the rope? Yeah, they have. But you guys have all seen what's happened in the last 2 weeks. And now, is this probably just a little pocket of success? Yeah. But you can also like make the correlation of, for all the people like that I've seen on Reddit, Chauncey hasn't developed anyone. He's developed and been a part of developing everyone. Who hasn't developed? Honestly, who has not developed? Every single one of them. Every single player on the roster has developed. It's incredible. It really is. And I'm not saying he's like some magic soothsayer of development because it's him and his staff, and the credit should go to the players mostly for doing it. But I think the Blazers probably at least evaluate it. But ultimately, I just don't think that they'll pick up his option or extend him. That's my gut feeling today. Check back at the end of the season. Like that's where that's at right now, to be honest. I don't have a good sense of where that's at. Credence, assuming we don't make a trade, when do we hold Cronin accountable for not trading Grant last offseason after having career highs? And if a good trade wasn't available then, was re-signing him a mistake? Time will tell. I mean, whatever they end up doing with Jerami, whether it's at the deadline, the summer, or heaven forbid they bring him back next year, like that's kind of, I think that's the end of it, right? And then you can say, yeah, they gave him too many years, or they gave him too much. I don't even think they gave him too much money, to be honest. I don't. Like, the Portland tax is real. You get paid a few more $1 million a month a year. I guess technically more a month too, to be up here. That's always going to be a part of it. You look at basically every contract ever that the Blazers have signed with somebody who wasn't in a max deal or something along those lines. It's like, yeah, there's a Portland tax. You know, you want me to stay up here where I'm geographically isolated. It's banging in the summer, but I live in LA or New York or Miami or Houston or whatever in the offseason anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think we're approaching that point for sure. James D, are we saying proof of concept and standing pat? No. This is fun. It's instructive, but I don't think this is a 2016 situation where they're like, yes, we are going to build with Scoot, Shaden, to Denny. That's it. And like, you know, get rid of Ant, get rid of Jerami, get rid of DA, get rid of everybody else. Like, this is what we're going with. Because I don't think that this sample, as good as it is something you can base that decision on. And to be honest, basketball post-trade deadline, unless you're a competing team, it's really hard to evaluate. Beware of smarch basketball. Every front office executive I've ever talked to about numbers post All-Star break is like, yeah, who were they playing? Were they playing basketball that mattered? Was it a contract here? You know, what was going on here? Like, there's always a lot of that, and I'm not saying that, but the Blazers specifically, but the league in general. Like, that's just something that just gets brought up. But do I think that the front office is looking at this and going, good, yes, this is what we want to see? Absolutely. Absolutely 100% agree. Because who doesn't want to see their young guys doing better? Across the board, they're all doing better. Like, I don't know how anybody argues with that. And that was coming into the season. I think they had two goals. It was one, position themselves for the lottery. They've probably gone beyond what they originally thought, which is both a good and a bad problem. I would suggest folks to listen to Hoop Collective today with Windhorst and Bobby Marks. And I've said this, and you can dismiss me because I'm an idiot, but Bobby Marks talks about when they went 12-70 with the Brooklyn Nets and how awful and miserable and disgusting and just how much it wore on guys. Like, it is nasty, nasty stuff. Like, post All-Star break alone, tanking is just brutal. Like, you're in the locker room, you're talking to guys. Hell, you're not even talking to guys sometimes because they're just like, oh, God, here we go again. You know, front offices are just like, all right, let's wrap this thing up. You know, support staff are just trying to do their job. Like, nobody's happy. It's miserable. Going through that is hellacious. Doing what the Wizards are doing right now, oof, I don't endorse it. Like, they've gone full process Sixers. I would not want the Blazers to go down that path with the way lottery odds are right now. Go back to 2019, plug the nose. Plug the nose and do it. They would suck, but the odds are so much better then. Because, God, look, the Wizards, they're going to have a very, 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 very good chance of getting Cooper Flag when you can look comparatively outside of the top three, right? But it's nowhere near that of what it used to be, nor is it anywhere close to a guarantee. So It is kind of what it is. And what are we getting here? Sorry, I'm trying to keep up on the trade deadline as things happen here. As my phone keeps going off. No other trades. Okay, good. No more trades. There we go. Baseball trades. Who cares? Adam, if KD gets traded, do the Blazers start hanging banners of the teams they single-handedly disbanded? I was texting with somebody today, and I was like, do you think losing to the Blazers in back-to-back games, snatched the soul or caused some serious soul-searching within the Suns? And they're like, I mean, that wasn't all of it, but it didn't help. So, Jesus Gomez, understanding that we won't know the full effects for years to come, is it fair to say the Blazers are winning the Dame trade? Nurk is a healthy DNP-CD. Nas is basically out of the league, which he's in the G League doing his thing. Nas, I love you. Hope you're doing well. And Dame's out with various injuries for a team that's barely above 500. I mean, Dame's been hooping for the most part this year, specifically. He's back to, 28-6, 28-7, or 25-7? Dame's been Dame. They made that move for Kuzma because, unfortunately, Chris Middleton's cooked. I love Chris. God, he was such a good player, but double ankle surgery, fall on the knees. It's just, my guy's just, the mobility. The same way with Nurk. The mobility just sapped him. It sucks. Nobody ever wins. When you're the team giving up the superstar, you never win. You never win. Well, unless you're the Lakers, because you gave up Anthony Davis, who is a superstar, but they won that one. So I'm already wrong. Very, 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 very rarely does the team that gives up the superstar win the trade. Okay? There's always that one caveat. But do I believe the Blazers came out of that as good as they could? Yes. The picks that led to Denny Avdia, Toumani Camara, DeAndre Ayton. Okay? You can say what you want about DA. The Suns would murder somebody to have DeAndre Ayton and Toumani Camara on their team right now. Like hide a body in the desert type stuff. It's just, there's just no way you can convince me otherwise. They still have additional capital from that deal. What do they do with Rob? Do they use one of the other pick in there? Do they use one of the other swaps in there? Like what else do they put out of there? We'll see. But I think that considering what they were up against and the options that they had, I think they came out of that pretty damn good. And they definitely came out better than Phoenix. Like if that I will agree with right now. And to be honest, the Blazers are probably the last team outside of the Lakers in this era trading an older star that is getting anything. Because the Miami Heat they got nothing out of that. They got a heavily protected first-round pick from the Warriors and Andrew Wiggins. Look, Andrew Wiggins is a totally fine player, but he's not been what he was in that title run in 22 since then. Like that point is long gone. Kenny Whitney, at what point did DC hit the rookie wall, and why is the knee brace still on? It's a matter of just protecting him at this point. Like, as somebody with chronically god-awful knees, and obviously has significantly more damage than DC has had, I don't understand why bigs just don't play. I get it. They're awkward, and if you don't have those issues, you don't want to do that. But, like, if you're big, I don't understand guys who don't play with knee braces on. It's just, look, like, think about offensive linemen in the NFL. The idea of, like, playing with knee braces on, like, no, even if they haven't had issues, because you just have, like, if you fall, if you twist, you turn, you tweak, like, there's just too much. As far as hitting the rookie wall, he hit it in December. Like, that was game 32 or 33 or something like that. It was like, ding, 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 ding. He's hit that wall that every rookie hits at some point in time, right around that time, because he's played as many games already in the NBA as he plays in a college season. And at the halfway, not even the halfway mark of the NBA season, he's already played more than the entire college, regular season at UConn. I think they played 34, actually. I think so, about that time. So in half the time, he played double the games of what he would have in college. And that's for a 7'3", 290-pound guy who never played more than really 20 minutes a game, who played in 40-minute halves. In college basketball, where you were not running up and down the floor, you have got a longer shot clock, possessions are longer, There's significantly less transition play. There's significantly smaller asks of him defensively. Look, I love DC, and I think he's going to be a very, very, very solid pro. I think his rim protection ability is through the roof. You saw him against the Phoenix Suns, switch down to Devin Booker, and my guy had Bambi legs. Dude just wobble leg, like, oh no. But that's the deal. Like, so it's just gonna take him a while, get his conditioning up to where it needs to be, to where he can play heavier minutes, get his brain and his understanding and his IQ up to the NBA level, the speed and pace of the game, and the different asks that are gonna be of him. Like, you don't want him away from the paint, but unfortunately, that's a thing that's gonna happen. So that's ultimately where I fall on that stuff. Is like, I don't think it's anything that's gonna be something that ultimately proves an issue long term, as far as like, there's no reason to expect it, because he hasn't been a guy who's been chronically injured, who had foot, ankle, knee issues. I think he just had a trick knee happen, and there you go. Julio Cantu. What's Joe's reputation amongst other GMs in this, his fourth deadline as the Blazers GM? It's a really, really good question, because I've had, I don't know, probably two hands worth of front office executives ask me my opinion on Joe, and my first response is always, it's good to me. I've heard his reputation in talks and negotiations. It's all obviously secondhand, because I'm not on the phone. I'm not in the room. So everything I hear is secondhand in that stuff. It's, what some other front office member tells me. What I've been told is that he has a price. If you can meet that price and they can help you meet your goals, you can get a deal done. That's what I've been told in 10 different ways. Nobody has told me that he is Danny Ainge trying to extract a pound of flesh every transaction, or Masai Ujiri going, I want that and more to get this deal done. Now, you can disagree with their prices of what like the value of that they have of their players, but I think you can have that. I think you can have that in literally every front office. There a guy at one team will, very clearly, I hate going back to this, but Luka Doncic. The idea of what he is and what their value was, significantly less than what the rest of the league would value Luka Doncic at, for whatever reason. But that's what I've heard. Like, I've heard that. Even I've had some people tell me that they think that he may ask for a higher value on one player, but on another, they were able to get a deal done quite easily. Like getting David Griffin and Joe Cronin getting the CJ McCollum deal. I've heard across the board from basically everyone. They're like, that was a deal that was amicable on both parties, and they were able to get done what they wanted to get done. Same with Denny Avdia. And if you want to talk about, like, Joe standing his ground on something, it's been talked about more than I can document, that the Blazers, like, one of the things they demanded in the trade was that Toumani Camara be included. So I think that's probably the way that you want your GM to operate. Like, I think maybe you want your GM to operate like Danny Ainge. The guy that does more big-time transactions than anybody else. I've often joked about Ainge, selling his soul to the devil, because, my God, how does he keep doing this? But he knows how to press the buttons and get done what he wants to get done. And it just feels like every time you make... Like, I wouldn't make a deal with Danny Ainge at this point, man, because it's just... Yikes. Like, what trade has he lost? Like, what trade do you even look at it and you go, yeah, no, that makes sense for both sides? Because it always feels like that guy's coming out on top. Catherine, who do you think the Blazers are getting the most calls about, regardless of whether we move them? After Saturday's trade, Saturday, Luka? Yeah, Saturday, Luka. 4 days ago, right? Yeah. I don't know. is everybody calling about, hey, how do you guys feel about Scoot now? How do you guys feel about Shaden now? Like the thing that I have heard from multiple front office members is everybody's calling on everyone. So it could be all over the place as far as who they're getting the most calls on. I've seen some of the mock trade deadline stuff that Rob Williams could be had for, was it Jaden Springer and 2 second-round picks? Bobby Marks. I love Bobby. Great dude. Got nothing but love for him, but like that's not what Rob will go for. As we saw Jaden Springer in a second-round pick swap for another second-round pick. So, yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like, was it Nate Duncan that had a bad first and a young player? I can't remember who it was for Toumani Camara, and I'm just sitting there going, I think the Blazers, and I said this on Twitter to one of the Knicks media members. I think the Blazers would. Again, I don't think Toumani is in any way, shape, matter, or form available, but I think the Blazers would demand. This is again me. This is my thought process. There's nothing had to do with the Blazers. Would demand 2 premium firsts or a premium first and a very good young player. Like that's how important they are. He is to them and what they're building, their culture, the way they're building their team out. Like I don't think that they would. Like you would have to overpay pretty drastically to get him. And again, that's the value. And I had the same person ask me, like, okay, pretend you're the GM and the Lakers offered you their 2031 or 2028. I can't remember what it was. Either way, either pick, unprotected for Toumani Camara. Would I say yes? And this is before the Luka trade, so it's actually more poignant. And my answer was no. I am never going to prioritize picks that are any way far out as for an important player from either the Lakers or the Heat because of literally what we just saw. Miami, it's tax-free. It's Miami. It's all those reasons. All of the stuff that kind of comes along with that, right? The Miami lifestyle, the Heat culture, all that, right? In LA, you can be inept and sit on your hands and just have a prime superstar, top 15 caliber player fall on your lap. And it's happened over and over and over and over and over again. Let's go down the list. So no, I am not going to be like a guy that really matters to me. I'm not trading him for Magic Beans from the Lakers or the Heat because they ain't growing. So, somebody asked, outside the Matrix, do you think Cronin will lower the price for the vets, especially Grant? No. I just don't think that they're at that point yet. Because like I said, if you think they're at their lowest, then they can get their lowest later. Like that's my justification in their head for where they're at. Waffles, say no trades. What is the incentive for veterans to allow themselves to be shut down? I can't imagine a 25-year-old like Ant agreeing to that, especially when his future here is in doubt. Well, I would argue that that's the exact reason why he would allow himself to be shut down if they did go down that path. If his future here is in doubt, why would he be out there and potentially incur an injury? Right? Like I think that's the very poignant thing. Get to the off season and then see what you can do from there. If that's the way it's going. And I don't think Ant's future is necessarily in doubt right now. So, trying to think if there's anything else that was on here. We've kind of answered this, but I think this is a good question. What are the Blazers looking for right now considering the recent performance? I think they're really just looking to see what's out there and trying to make a deal. Like, it's such a front office, trope of I think Joe's actually said this, where, we're always opportunistic. Like, I think they're out there looking and scouring, but the more I think about it, the more I think this is a team that likes to do stuff in the offseason, have more time, have more runway, have more understanding, have free agency, the draft, other stuff kind of all going on at the same time. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just a general feel that I get. Gavi asked, with this squad, could Portland trade for an all-star and compete, or is our only way of acquiring top talent to the draft? No. Trading for an all-star is is one avenue. Like, I mean, free agency is the only avenue that doesn't exist. Draft is the most likely outcome, even it being a crapshoot. But could they trade for an all-star and compete? Well, there's sliding level of all-stars, right? Let's use De'Aaron Fox, who was just traded, right? De'Aaron Fox makes them a good team. Play-in team? Probably. Probably. Maybe. Squint hard enough? Maybe. Like, he's better. De'Aaron Fox is I mean, he's better than Anthony. He's an all-star. 27-7. Does that make them a better team? So I think it's the right star. Like, that's the thing that's most important. And then the right fit. Like, and again, I think you're looking for a guy who's certified bucket getter in the under 25 range, like the guy who can be the hub of your offense, because I think that's the thing that they're missing. That can be like the guy that is going to be your everything on every single night. I think that's the way they're looking. But ultimately, I think that's where we are. So, all right, we're just over an hour here. I guess we'll wrap it up here for now. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. I think I got to damn near every question. So, I appreciate you guys. You guys submitted a lot of really good questions. I think there's only like 2 that I had to kind of push to the side that were a little like, can't do those. But keep them coming in. Like I said, we'll follow up on the next trade deadline. I'll be carrying the press conference tomorrow before the game, after the trade deadline, see where things are at. Like, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. I do have the Scoot Henderson long form piece that I'm still working on. If you want to get some additional insight into some of the stuff that I was already writing about, you can go read Jason Quick's piece at The Athletic. It highlights a lot of the stuff that I was using for the framing coming with it. I have draft stuff coming, and then following the trade deadline, we should have Donovan. So that's where we sit with that stuff now. So I'm hoping to get Donovan. I'd like to get Denny. Just get a chance for you guys to see these guys a little more relaxed, normal, and not so buttoned up as it always is. Because I think those are both guys everybody would love to get to know. They're great dudes. So tune in tomorrow afternoon. Danny and Dusty, 1080 The Fan at noon. Trade deadline will end, and we will dive right into the trade deadline. Despite it being Super Bowl week, we will kind of rehash what does or doesn't happen, both nationally and locally. Ramifications for the Trailblazers now going forward. And if you want to vent or celebrate or whatever it is, you can text in under the show. You can tweet at me during the show. And then I'll move from there into the pregame media availability if the Blazers do indeed do what they've been planned. So other than that, like, rate, review, subscribe on the YouTube, subscribe to the Patreon. I'll maybe start dumping some more free stuff in the Patreon as well. I would like to do like more shorter form, like free stuff on Patreon, but the problem is I get done with the games, do the post game, and then I drive over to K2, do the TV show, and I get home at 12:30, and it's just hard to keep up with all that. So I am trying to give you guys some more value, even the people that are subscribed for free. So and then I have draft coverage coming. I have a ton of it ready to go. That I just want to go see some guys in person. I want to see some more tape, and then make some final adjustments on that stuff, including my latest mock, which I have done, but I just have to do the graphics for it all. So I shouldn't say mock, my big board. Other than that, I will catch you guys tomorrow on the radio, and then pregame for the press conference, and then postgame on Rip City Wrap Up. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Talk soon.